Good morning, everyone. How are you both doing?
Good.
What's your names again?
Mateo.
Huh?
Imani and Latay.
Then Mateo.
Latea.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty.
Cool. All right. Well, welcome to Sunday school. It's a good Sunday to be here. Hey, who's that on the board right there on the right?
Kobe Bryant.
Okay, look in your books real quick. There's a good story.
Page 22.
There's a good story on Kobe Bryant. Have y'all heard about Kobe Bryant? He was a good basketball player. So it talks about some of the inward change that he did as a basketball player. And we're going to talk about inward change. We're also going to talk today about unity. You ever heard that term, unity? You ever had like a group of people where you had different backgrounds trying to come together for something? And you kind of see it when you grow up, because if you're like me, I grew up in my neighborhood and everybody in my neighborhood looked like me, had roughly the same background as me, same parents kind of worked similar jobs. And so I grew up knowing all my friends, and then I went to school and I met people from different backgrounds, different races. So did y'all have that similar experience growing up? How was it like when you first went to school or you met these different groups of people, different backgrounds, different races? How was that experience? Did you like it?
Yeah, it was
Fine.
It was all right. So what were you used to up to that? Like, were you used to just your friends growing up as kids? Okay.
Are you
So-
all from Charlotte originally? Okay.
Okay. So what part of Charlotte?
I don't really
Huh?
know. I just know we're from Charlotte.
What schools do you go to?
I go to Central Cabarrus High School.
Okay.
Rocky River.
Rocky
Okay.
River High School. Rocky River Middle School.
Middle school.
So what's the name of your elementary schools?
Central Cabarrus High School.
Well, I mean, when you went to elementary school.
It was Smithfield.
Yes,
Elementary.
Okay. So how was that? Y'all remember when y'all were first going to Smithfield and you met? Did you know a lot of people from different backgrounds before you went to school?
No, I didn't really know anybody. I
Oh.
was just like,
You just kind of knew, like you were like me, you just kind of knew your friends in the neighborhood. And so you get exposed to different people from different races and different ethnic backgrounds, and, different income levels. It's different, right? So that's what was going on. Today's Sunday school lesson is it's one of the best. It's one of the best writings in the whole Bible, in my opinion, Book of Romans. And it was about this church that had all these different people with different backgrounds that were going into the church, and they were dealing with a lot of issues. Oh, we got Jayla online. Hey, Jayla. You're on mute if you're talking.
Hello.
How are you doing? Good to have you on with us.
Indeed.
So,
Good, you guys.
So Jayla, you can join in here. So I'll put it out to everyone. So what are some issues that you deal with when you're dealing with people with different backgrounds all coming together in what, like when you go to school? What are some issues that sometimes you deal with when you're not familiar with their background, their ethnic culture, their different income levels, different people just different coming together? What are some issues you sometimes see whether it's school, whether it's a team? What are some things that you kind of see sometimes?
Well, I do see like them forming their own groups. Even in elementary school, we had people forming their own groups and other people knew them by that. I mean, like it didn't have a name or anything. They just like put them in categories, like the cool kids and the smart kids and the kids who fool around and stuff. So like it's just like putting like people in certain levels and stuff, and then stereotypes play a role in that as well. So those are some of the things that people would struggle with, different backgrounds and different stuff like that. So yeah.
Very good. Amani, any thoughts on that? Have you ever been like exposed to like different groups and see these kind of problems happen?
Yeah.
You ever heard of favoritism?
Yeah.
What happened? What's favoritism?
Basically, when you're showing another person more, I guess, attention, than the other person or other people.
Okay, okay. Welcome, fellas. How y'all doing? Good. Having a good school year so far? Did y'all enjoy the 3-day weekend last week?
The what day?
They had a 3-day weekend. Y'all enjoyed that Monday off? I wish I had a 3-day weekend this week, don't
Yeah, well,
you? Okay, so some of the background here, last couple of weeks we talked about this whole idea of the faith triumphs and the law fails, and we had page 22 in the books. And we had lessons on Jesus, and he was basically dealing with this group called the Pharisees. And we had a lesson on people being spiritually clean. People had the appearance on the outside like they were clean, but on the insides, Jesus was teaching that it doesn't matter how much you look or how good you look on the outside, it's really what's inside. And then we have a lesson where Jesus shows mercy on someone and heals that person on the Sabbath. And a lot of the Pharisees try to trap Jesus and try to get him in trouble. The Pharisees, we said, were kind of like the law enforcers, kind of like the police at the time. And then last week we had a lesson where a woman made a mistake and Jesus showed them forgiveness. Has your parents ever showed you forgiveness? You made a mistake, they forgive you. Would your mom forgive you of not cleaning your room? What was it for? What was it for? What did you do where your mom forgave you?
it's so many, you can't even think of one right now.
Wow. It's like me as a kid. It's so many. It's like, wow. All right. So what are some ways that we talked about all the problems that happen when you have different groups? Do you guys play sports? What sports do you play? Sports do you play?
Me.
Huh?
I play on football and soccer.
Football and soccer. Okay. So on the football team, you have different people from different neighborhoods, right? Different races, different, all different schools, or is it for your school? Different schools? Do you play for a park and rec, or you play for your school?
Park.
Okay, so different schools, right? So is it easy on a football team for the guys that are from the same school to kind of look out for one another and have a clique? Is that true? You said what's what
Hold
you
on
play?
1 second. Jayla is on the line and she can't hear you nodding, okay? So let's speak. Thank you.
All right, and what sport do you play?
Oh, I play basketball.
Okay, so do you see that sometimes? You got to pass the ball.
Mhm.
And if you don't like somebody, you don't pass them the ball. All right, so in basketball especially, you have to work as a unified group. So why do people show favoritism? Why do you think?
What do you mean again?
Why do people show favoritism? Why do people have favorites, friends, and
Because they like that person more than the other.
they like that person more than the other? Okay, so how do you get around that when you're trying to work? Like two players that like each other and they just pass the ball to each other. How do you get them to pass it to the other 3 players? What do you have to do?
Tell them to ask them about it.
Yeah, kind of address it, right? So in your books is a story on Kobe Bryant and how Kobe was. Have you heard of Kobe Bryant?
Yes.
Okay. Do you wear his shoes?
Hmm?
Do you wear his shoes? A lot of players wear Kobe Bryant shoes. A lot of basketball. Do you wear Kobe Bryant basketball shoes?
Oh, I used to.
You used to. Okay. You like them? Okay. So Kobe Bryant, before you guys were born, he won 3 championships where he was playing with this guy named Shaquille O'Neal, who's still on TV, and they were good friends. but there was problems between them because there was jealousy, and it led to the Lakers trading away Shaquille O'Neal. And Kobe had to adjust. He had to have an inward change. He had to adjust with playing with teammates, being a leader. And so his last two championships were without Shaquille O'Neal. And in the book, it talks about how he had to embrace being a good teammate, being a good leader, and he had to embrace not showing favoritism to different players, but basically getting everybody to work together as a unit for those last two championships. So the first three championships, he had someone he could kind of lean on. The last three, he was somewhat of the leader. So that's kind of Kobe Bryant's basketball career in a nutshell. Of course, we lost him a couple of years ago, as I said in the book, but it talked about the inward change in him. If you followed those teams, one of the things they did well in those last championship teams is they passed the ball well, and a lot of players played well together. So now some of the background here is Paul. Have you ever heard of Paul? Do you know who Paul is? You ever heard of Paul? Amani, you ever heard of Paul? Okay, Paul.
All in the Bible.
Paul in the Bible. You ever heard of Paul? Well, Paul was, I mean, it's a really good story because Paul was somebody who grew up hating Christians. He did not like anyone that followed Jesus. So if Paul were to walk in here long time ago and to see us talking about Jesus, he would want to try to do something bad to us because he didn't like people that follow Jesus. Then it talks about he was going to this place called Damascus, and he was going to do a lot of harm to a lot of the Christian worshipers there. And there he meets Jesus. Jesus meets him on the road and basically converts him from one who would go and try to hurt Christians to someone who would later go and promote and try to get people to become Christians. Does that make sense? So Paul changed, he flipped. He had this what they call Damascus Road experience. And what he did is he went around promoting Christianity. And a lot of the people that he promoted Christianity to were people who were not familiar with the Old Testament. Now, y'all know about the Old Testament and the New Testament of the Bible. So the Old Testament is really the first part of the Bible, starting with Genesis all the way through the book of Malachi, probably about 2/3 of the Bible. It talks about all the things from Moses to Abraham to all the Old Testament figures. And so, but there were people that Jesus came after all of those people. And so Paul was basically promoting having a relationship with Jesus Christ, even to those people who were not familiar with the prophets and all of the Old Testament. So let's say there's something that you want to promote. Has anyone ever went to a good restaurant and told somebody how good the food was there? Have you ever done that? Or have y'all seen a movie that you like? What's a good movie that you recently seen? What's your name? Tatea. What's a good movie that or TV program that you've seen? Or better yet, sometimes the better example is, let's say you've been watching you guys watch Netflix. Okay, so let's say you have a series on Netflix, and let's say you're on season 3 or 4, right? And you're trying to tell people about that series who didn't see the first parts of the series, parts 1 and 2, but you're telling them how good it is. But you want them to see the series because it's so good. What's a Netflix series that you like? Give me an example. Just like anybody.
I don't know if they have series.
Okay.
Yeah, in their
Okay.
shows.
Animation.
Did y'all see the Barbie movie?
What about the Little Mermaid? No.
Barbie movie.
Oh, we forgot Jayla. Jayla,
Jayla.
what have you seen?
I've seen the Barbie movie.
Oh, you saw the Barbie.
Okay. So what Paul was trying to do was trying to promote to people who never had a relationship with God that it was good to have a relationship with God, even though you didn't have the background of the Old Testament. So he writes this letter to the Roman church, and he's trying to get unity between the two different groups. The two different groups within the church were the people that were familiar with the Old Testament and the people that were not familiar with the Old Testament, but they all were coming together to worship Jesus Christ. So there was this man back then, his name was Claudius, and he went and he kicked all of the Jewish people out of Rome. Told if you believed in the Old Testament to get out. So in Rome, what happened is that all the people that were left behind were the people that believed in Christ, but they were all Gentile Christians. So they kept the church running while the people who were converted, who were Jewish Christians, left. And so when they came back, after this Claudius, after he leaves, when the Jews come back to Rome, now they're dealing with the church was already running without them. And how do you come into this church that had already been run by other people? And they were dealing with the fact that they thought they were better than the people that had not been exposed to the Old Testament. They thought they were better than them. And so they wanted to be in charge. Now, have you ever had an older brother or sister and they leave and anybody have an older brother or sister that goes to college, that's in college? You have an older brother or sister? Okay, how old is he? Huh? Okay, does he try to take charge does he try to tell you? Now, he's not living in the house, right?
Yes.
Oh, he's still living in the house. Okay, so, but now, do you guys always listen to your older brother?
Yeah.
Okay, now, when he goes and leaves, let's say a couple of years and he goes and leaves and you guys are still there, and he comes back, it's going to be a little different from him trying to tell you what to do, right? Now, I know Jayla has this, right? Your older sister? Jayla?
Wait, are you asking if I have an older sister?
Yeah, you have an older sister, right?
I do.
All right, so how was it when she left for college and tried to come back home and tell you what to do?
Well, the funny thing is that when she did go to college, at that point in time, we had moved and she did not come back home. So she didn't really tell me what to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get into this lesson. So let's look at this YouTube video. This is a show I used to watch a long time ago. And let's see if this kind of gets us into the lesson. So this is a man who he's trying to embrace African culture. He buys dashiki, changes his name, and he's trying to tell his father that his father needs to embrace African culture. And let's see what happens when he introduces him to someone who's truly from Africa. And let's see what she has to say.
Why don't you just go to bed? I ain't sleepy. Why don't you go to bed? All right, then why don't you sit here and be quiet and stop making a clown out of yourself, and you might learn something.
Hold up for a second. I learned this. I have to share. You see this right here, optimize? You say you have to optimize it so that the people online can see it. Yeah. Okay. This is what I just learned. Okay, Jayla, can you hear it now? Jayla, I'm going to replay it so Jayla can hear it.
Why don't you just go to bed? I ain't sleepy. Why don't you go to bed? All right, then why don't you sit here and be quiet and stop making a clown out of yourself, and you might learn something.
Oh, Yano, I think we should be leaving.
Hey, listen, you don't have to be on account of my father's behavior. He always acts like this.
It is not your father's behavior, Brother Kalunda. It is your behavior.
Me? What did I do?
The way you talk to your father is deplorable. No, it is inexcusable. In my country, such behavior is unheard of. You would be beaten.
I wish I had you in Nigeria. I'd knock you out.
Brother Kalunda, it is not your place to chastise your father.
Listen closely.
You must respect your father, for he is full of years and wisdom. You must not forget who is the parent and who is the child.
Listen to it, dummy. Go ahead, honey.
Therefore, it is your duty to make his life pleasant, not unpleasant. A child should strive to make his parents' winter years like spring.
This child made my winter years one long blizzard.
He provided for you when you were a child and could not provide for yourself. So must you provide for him now.
And you're not only beautiful, you're smart.
Brother Kalunda, you have far to go along this path you have chosen for yourself before you reach your destination. Do not mistake dashikis and sculpture and a hairstyle for Africa, because they aren't. Nor can you expect merely to put on that cloth and become such a man as your ancestors were. The clothes you can put on and off. It is the heart you must change. The heart. Forgive me.
So what did you get out of what she just told Kalunda? What was she trying to tell him?
Respect your father and your mother. Respect your parents.
Respect your parents. What else?
That his father prepared food for him when he couldn't prepare food for himself.
Right.
That he provided for him.
Okay. What else was he trying to? What else was he trying? What else was she trying to tell him about the life he was trying to embrace?
That just wearing the clothes from Africa doesn't make him accept the entire culture.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So wearing the dashiki and putting on like you're from African culture doesn't make you African. What makes you African is what did she say? What did the lady say? It was
Your heart.
the heart, right? So let's get into this lesson. We're going to talk about the law. That was the 600 plus rules given to Israel by God through Moses. It's the first 5 books of the Bibles. And the Gentiles were those that were not familiar with the Old Testament. So page 22. So I don't want to mess up your name. So I know Monty. Okay, if you could read the first verses 12 through 16 right here.
On 23.
All right, page
On
23.
page 23,
Yeah.
Stop at the 16.
Yeah, stop at 16.
All who sin apart from the law will also flourish apart from the law, and who all sin under the law will be judged by the law. For it is not those who hear the law who are righteous in God's sight, but it is those who obey the law and who will be declared righteous. Indeed, when Gentiles who do not have the law do by nature things required by the law, they are a law for themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that the requirements of the law are written on their hearts. Their consciences also bearing witness, and their thoughts sometimes accusing them, and at other times even defending them.
One more verse.
This will take place on the day when God judges people secrets through Jesus Christ, as my gospel declares.
Right. So what's going on here? Let's go back to the video for a second, right? The son was trying to claim that he was
African.
based on what?
His clothes.
His clothes and what else?
How he act.
Huh?
How he act.
Well, yeah. But now what was the lady telling him?
It's in your heart.
It's in your heart. Does that make sense? Now let me ask you guys this question. Are there people that don't go to church, but still do good things? They don't go to church. Why do you think they do good things? They don't go to church, they don't have a relationship with God, but they still generally do good things. They don't steal, they don't lie, they don't tell on you, they don't do anything. They're just good people. Why do you think that? They don't have any relationship with God, but they're just good people.
Because they want to follow the law.
They're not even aware of the law.
Or not?
Let's
I
say
mean-
no relationship with God, but they're just good people.
Ooh.
Let's say you go to a country like, let's say you go to an Asian country where many people don't practice Christianity, but you still have good people there that still give to charity, still do good things. So what's driving them to be good people, if not by the law?
They want to be treated the same way?
Okay, what do y'all think? What do you think? Do you respect your parents? Do you love your parents? So according to what that lady said, that's part of African culture, but of that country. But you are African Americans here in America, but you still live by a lot of the principles that the lady said was important in another country. Does that make sense? Yeah. So even though you are not native to the country, even though your ancestors come from that country, and you're native here to America, let's make the example something else. Let's say there's something that's in Mexican culture that they do, that you might also do, even though you're not a part of that culture. So what Paul's saying here is doing the right thing or being nice to people, honoring your parents, not stealing, right? These are all things that are said in the law, right? In the 10 Commandments, right? Honor your parents, don't steal, don't lie, don't kill anybody, right? You have people that don't have a relationship with God that still live by those principles, even though they don't have it. So they don't have a law, but they still have a conscience to do the right thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then what? So why do we have a law then? Why do you think? Does that make sense? Jill, why do you think?
Can you please restate the question?
Yeah. Okay. People do the right things. They don't kill people. They don't steal. And these are people that go to church and don't go to church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if sometimes people do the right things, even though they don't have the law of God that they're following, then why even have the law of God? What's the purpose of that law?
The purpose is so that you know what it is and you acknowledge it, and that it's a guideline of what you should not do. It's like a first step, basically, when accepting God. I think of it like as a first step, like you acknowledge this and you don't do this. Now it's time for you to start gathering your faith in it. So I think the law is just there to help guide people away from doing things that will cause them to fall into sin.
Very good. Well, imagine you went to school and there were no rules.
That would be horrible. Everybody would be getting bullied or beaten and stuff.
What do you think? If you went to school and there were no rules, what would happen? What would happen at your school? Huh?
It would be bad.
Would you participate
No,
in doing bad?
no.
Come on, tell the
You
truth.
might.
I don't know.
Ashley, how about you? How would your school be if there were no rules?
Out of control.
Out of control, right? So there has to be rules, right? Now, you might go to a school, and I remember teachers put the rules on the board and some didn't. But people kind of, you get trained, right? So whether you went to school, Ashley, what grade are you in?
Okay.
Okay, so you've been in school, you know, since kindergarten. You kind of know how to act in school, right? I mean, it's still good to have rules, but you subconsciously know how to act. So the rules are meant to expose or to show us how we're supposed to act. But it also exposes how naturally, if there weren't any rules, we know how things would go. So the rules or the laws were meant to show us how imperfect we are. If there weren't any rules, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if there weren't any rules at your school, it'd be total chaos. Would you agree, Tatiana? That's why I said Tatiana. Lataya. Would you agree to that? If there weren't any rules, it'd be total chaos, wouldn't it? Right? Amani, if there weren't any rules at your school, would it be total chaos? So the rules were meant to give us as a guide, but does everybody follow the rules?
No.
Does anyone perfectly 100% follow every rule?
No.
Right? So it's meant to expose how imperfect you are, right?
Mhm.
All right, you play basketball?
Yeah.
Max.
Huh? Max,
It's Max, yeah.
Max, you play basketball. All right. How good is your team?
Good. Good.
How do you know that?
How they play?
But how do you know that you're a good team?
Our teamwork?
You play other teams?
Hmm?
You play other teams?
Yeah, I'm starting to play other teams.
Do you beat every team? Why not? You and your young ladies play sports? Any kind of competition? You play football? What happens after a football game? Or after what do you learn about your team after playing somebody else? It exposes your weaknesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you never played somebody, you wouldn't know where the weaknesses are.
Yep.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the rules were meant to expose our weaknesses. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if there were no rules, I could just declare me as a perfect person. I'm a perfect person.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you a perfect person? I'm just a perfect person. Well, what standard are you a perfect person? Well, I follow all the rules. Well, no, you don't. Because nobody follows all the rules. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody 100% follow all the rules. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the law was meant to show how imperfect we are. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, on the upper right of the screen, what do you see there? You see that?
Women walking.
Women walking. They have on specific colors. Do you young ladies know what those colors mean?
Those African colors.
No. Do you know what they mean? Actually, you know what those mean? Okay. Those are different sororities, and this was back when. The ladies in the pink and green, they had a lady that was the current vice president, is a member of that organization, and they wanted to show unity, so they had this thing called Stroll to the Pole. Now, strolling is something that all the sororities do, where they come together and they do their sorority dances and their and they have certain chants that they do. But they basically wanted to come together. So even though they were in different sororities, they wanted to come together and show that even though these ladies are in a sorority, these ladies are in a different sorority, these ladies are in a different sorority, we're all going to come together in unity to support this candidate's ticket. Does that make sense? It was a movement called Stroll to the Polls. Now, I hope none of you know what this is, but this is that in Los Angeles. These are two different games, and they're coming together. One of them notoriously wears red, one of them notoriously wears blue, and they came together in unity in protest of the George Floyd situation, where the police brutality in the Black Lives Matter movement. So, what does this mean? The sin of partiality. What does that mean? You have your hand raised over here, Max. Okay. Did y'all have a question about that? Okay, Amani, what do you think this means right here? What does that mean? The sin of partiality.
I don't even know what that
Me
means, so
either.
I think you need to explain it to
Yeah.
all of us.
Yeah.
It means it's basically it's basically the natural sin. We talked about how we all come together as a group, but it's the natural sin of me saying, hey, I'm gonna show partiality to Max because I like basketball.
Favoritism.
Favoritism, right? It's a sin. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Max likes Kobe Bryant, right? And I like Kobe Bryant. So I'm not showing favoritism towards Max. So that in itself is a sin. So what this is saying, what he's saying in these scriptures is that they all need to come together. This law exposed, it was meant to expose how imperfect that they were. So in verse 13, it says that there are people that hear the law. There are people who never been exposed to God's law, but still subconsciously do the right things. They don't steal. They don't rob people. They do the things that are in the law, even though they're not claiming to be led by the law. And there are people who know the law and they still sin, right? So in both cases, you have imperfection. Does that make sense? One has a law that shows them they're imperfect. One doesn't have a law, right? But the people who are aware of the law know that they're perfect. And it says that the Gentiles, even though they didn't have the law, they had the common sense to say that they needed Jesus Christ in their life. Does that make sense? Even though they didn't know about Moses, Abraham. So all these people that knew about Moses and Abraham and Noah and all those good Old Testament stories, they have no right to claim that they're better than anybody, right? Because that same law that they claim to make them perfect, only was meant to highlight their imperfection. That makes sense? So they're all, and later on in Romans, he's going to tell them that they're all imperfect and need Jesus. Does that make sense? You ever had an athlete that thinks they didn't need practice? You ever had somebody who thought they were smart enough that they didn't need to study? Right? So this is basically telling them that all of them, right? Look at verse 15. They show that the requirements of the law are written on their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts sometimes accusing them, at other times defending them. So these are people, even though they didn't have the Old Testament law, had the good common sense or consciousness to say that I need to have a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And it says at the end of the day, look at verse 16. What does verse 16 say, Ashley?
This will take place on the day when God judges people's secrets through Jesus Christ, as my gospel declares.
So when God judges people, it's not going to be about who knows what about the Old Testament. That makes sense?
Yes.
It's not going to be about, because everybody is, whether you know about the Old Testament or not, we're all imperfect. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So in your own words, excuse me,
Mateo.
in your own words, what does that mean to you? We're all imperfect, right? So what does that mean to you as imperfect? What does that mean to you?
Like no one's not gonna make, like everyone's gonna make a mistake like that. Like not everybody's just not gonna never make a mistake. Like everybody's gonna make a mistake.
Everybody makes mistakes, right? Now, Armani, can I claim based on my knowledge of the Old Testament to be in a better position to have a relationship with Christ than you, because you may not know as much about the Old Testament than I? Can I make that claim?
Yes.
Why? Just because I know the law doesn't mean I kept the law. Does that make sense? You obey your parents, right? You don't lie, you don't steal. what makes me better than you just because I'm aware of the law that says you're not supposed to lie or steal? Actually, am I better than you because I know the law? If I don't keep it, does it matter? Right? So we're all in need of help. And what he's saying in these verses is that it doesn't matter whether you, it doesn't matter how you came to Christ. What matters is that you do come to Christ. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because it doesn't matter what your background is. It's not where you're from. It's not where your neighborhood is. It's not who your friends were. It's all about if you're able to have a relationship with Christ. And that's what he's trying to say in these lessons. So let's go to these next verses. Jayla, can you read 17, 18, and 19? And then Ashley, if you could read 21, 22, 23, and 24.
All right, 17 to 19. Now you, if you call yourself a Jew, if you rely on the law and boast in God, if you know this will and approve of what is superior because you are instructed by the law, if you are convinced that you are a guide for the blind, a light for those who are in the dark.
Go ahead, Ashley.
An instructor of the foolish, teacher of little children, because you have in the law the embodiment of knowledge, the truth, you then who teach others who do not teach yourself. You who preach against stealing, do you steal? You who say that people should not commit adultery, you do commit adultery. Do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, do you dishonor God by breaking the law? As it is written, God's name is blasphemy among the Gentiles because of you.
Come on, can you read 28 and 29?
A person is not a Jew who is one only outwardly, nor is circumcision merely outward and physical. No, a person is a Jew who is born inwardly, and circumcision is circumcision of the heart by the spirit, not by the written code. Such a person praise is not from other people, but from God.
All right, in the video I showed you earlier, what did the African lady tell the son? What did she tell the son about wearing dashikis and everything? What did she tell him?
The African culture is in your heart.
It's in your heart. Does that make sense? Yeah. So knowledge of the law, circumcision. This is things that male Jews did that distinguished them as male Jews. All of these things, all of these outward things, it doesn't matter. What matters is in the heart, right? And what matters, whether you grew up knowing the law and still broke the law, right? Look at verse 18 through 24. It says they knew the law and they kept breaking the law. Even though they, whether you knew the law and kept breaking the law, or whether you unknowingly broke God's law due to your lack of knowledge of the Old Testament, what matters at the end is that you have faith in Jesus Christ, who died on the cross. Now, what happened when he died on the cross? What happened to all of our sins?
They went away.
They went away, right? So it doesn't matter if you got 1,000 sins and I got 5 million sins, right? They all go away. Whether you were aware that you were breaking the law or you weren't aware that you were breaking the law. At the end of the day, all that you got to know is that you got a clean slate once you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And that's the point that he was trying to make. So faith is greater than fear, hate, evil, and the law. And even though people thought they were saved by the actions that they do, You ever see people think they're holy and they're doing the right thing and that's gonna get them to heaven? Is doing the right thing gonna get you to heaven? Is it? What's gonna get you to heaven?
You
Well, I'm
obey
sorry.
God.
Oh, can you obey God at all times? Do you obey God at all times?
Yeah.
And how do we know that? Because we got a law and we can't follow it, right? So this lesson in simple is everybody needs Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. We got this, have you guys heard of Thurgood Marshall? Raise your hand if you know Thurgood Marshall. What do you know about Thurgood Marshall?
I just know his name.
You just don't think he's got a good foundation. Okay, we're not going to look at the video because we're running out of time. He was one of the top civil rights lawyers in U.S. history. He graduated from Howard University and he won a famous case called Brown versus Board of Education. Now, the reason I brought Thurgood Marshall up is that he had an inward change. All right. He was jailer's age and he played a prank, got in trouble. And you know what his punishment was? His punishment was he had to read the U.S. Constitution word for word. And that inspired him to be a lawyer. He would go on to win a lot of cases, including Brown versus Board of Education and other major civil rights cases. Have you ever heard of Brown versus Board of Education? Do you know what that is? They don't even teach that in school.
I do.
Okay, you know what Brown versus Board. What is Brown versus Board of Education?
Well, I can't say I remember it specifically, but I do remember it was when I think it was when they had like people entering colleges, like I think it all I remember was that it had something to do with when Black students were being introduced into like colleges or high schools.
It was in Topeka, Kansas. It was the family, the Brown family. Their son was denied entry into a school because of the color of his skin. The Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP Defense Fund defended the case and won a case in which it allowed African Americans and Caucasian Americans to come together to go to the same school. Now, the reason that was important because at the time, there were separate schools, like my parents went to separate schools, but a lot of the resources, a lot of the federal funds and resources were unequally dispersed between African American schools and schools that had mainly whites. So this school case made it, Thurgood Marshall argued that that was illegal and against the constitutional right of not only the Board family, but of every African American that they have unequal resources. So that's Thurgood Marshall. So a couple takeaways from the lesson, Chaz. Any takeaways from this lesson? Max.
Oh,
Max. Any takeaways? We'll come back to you. So, Matea, any takeaways? None?
just anything you learned or
Anything
anything
you
that
learned?
sticks with you.
And Max.
That you can always obey the law.
Right? Nobody is perfect, right? So the law shows us our imperfections. Armani?
Yeah, not everybody's perfect.
Not everybody's perfect. So because we're not perfect, what do we need?
To obey the law.
If you obey the law, can you save yourself? Well, if nobody can obey if the law can't save you, then you need Jesus Christ to come in. Because why can Jesus Christ save us? Because he died, right? And what happened to all our sins when he died? Huh?
It went away. It went away.
They went away. So everybody is in need of that. Everybody is in need of their sins to be atoned, and that's the only way to atone for your sin. Does that make sense? Okay, Amani, you've already gave us one. Ashley, I know you came, lady. Any takeaways that you got? Y'all at least know who Thurgood Marshall is?
Yes.
You know who is Thurgood? Okay. And what's your name again? What's your name?
Kinda,
Huh?
kinda.
Okay, any takeaways you get?
Matters in the heart.
Huh?
It matters what's in the heart.
It matters what's in the heart. Okay. All right. Number one, God does not show favoritism. Number two, the law exposed our need for salvation. Number three, salvation is faith in Jesus, not through our own actions. We are saved by faith. We show our faith through our actions. Does that make sense? So our actions are to exhibit that we believe in Jesus Christ. So, all right, any other comments or questions? Jayla, any takeaways on your end?
My takeaway is that we can all come together.
Come together.
Yep.
All right.
Even if we're different.
All right. We're calling anything you want to add?
No, good lesson.
Okay. All right, we got some snacks for you. And thank y'all for coming. And I know there's a football game on right now. And I thank y'all for not going on your phones and watching the game like I would have done if I was in high school, the same as Sunday school. So I have a good rest of the week.
And thank you, young ladies, for coming. This is your first time at Sunday school? Here? Okay. We're glad to have you. We need somebody to close us out in prayer.
And we want you to get a snack before you leave. And,
Yeah.
Jayla, can you close us out in prayer?
Sure. May we all bow our heads and close our eyes, please? Thank you, dear Lord God, for everything you have done for us. Thank you for this wonderful lesson, and I hope and pray that we'll have a wonderful day today. Thank you, and amen.
All right, I'm gonna play while y'all eating. I'm gonna play this
Okay.
quick one.
Here's some snacks. We have cheese Danish, apple Danish, we have crackers. Take one of these. Put them right there.
In 1920s Baltimore, a black high school student was punished for playing a prank on his classmates by having to read the U.S. Constitution. The punishment would inspire him to go on and become the leading civil rights lawyer of his time. That young man was Thurgood Marshall. He grew up under Jim Crow, a set of rules, laws, and customs that enforced racial segregation in the United States. After college, Marshall applied to the University of Maryland School of Law, but was denied a place simply because of his race. He attended the historically black Howard University Law School instead and graduated top of his class. As an attorney, his first big win was in the case Murray versus Pearson in 1936, when student Donald Gaines Murray was denied admission to the University of Maryland because he was black. Marshall argued that the school had violated the 14th Amendment, which guarantees Americans equal protection under the law. The judge ruled that Murray could attend, but should be separated from his fellow white students. It was a victory that resonated with Marshall. He had been denied admission to the same university 5 years before. Marshall was convinced that the only way for African Americans to succeed was by improving their access to education. The problem was, black children did not have the same opportunities, so Marshall decided to fight through the courts. He joined the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People as a lawyer in 1936. Working for over 20 years, he won a staggering 29 cases before the Supreme Court. But one of his greatest victories was the landmark case Brown versus the Board of Education, where the court agreed with his argument that separate educational facilities for students was inherently unequal and schools should be fully integrated. In 1967, President Lyndon B. Johnson nominated him to the Supreme Court, making Marshall the first black person to serve on the highest court in the land. There, he continued to protect the rights of Americans.
He was the first. Who was the second? She just got nominated. Y'all know? Huh? He was the first African American to be on the Supreme Court. Recently, we just had the second. I just want to see if y'all know who the name is.
No, that was the third.
Third, that's right. Ketanji was the third. Who's the second? I missed the second.
Clarence Thomas.
Oh, yeah, I don't count them. My bad. Clarence was the second. Third.
Until his retirement in 1991. How do you think early influences on Thurgood Marshall's life helped propel him on a course to fulfill the promise of the U.S. Constitution?
So, who did y'all come to church with?
There's one simple vision hack anyone can.
Will they come and pick them up? Oh, they gonna come and pick them? Okay. I didn't know if y'all were gonna go to children's church.
You gonna come back to show up, right? Or y'all gonna go to children's church?
We're going to children's church.
Morning. Where's Danish?
Yeah, I'll get one. Let's see.
I can't endure this. I just need to sit and watch you all eat in front of me. And they're my favorite snack.
We'll say, you on the way?
No,
How about the
it's at my dad's house. It's this weekend.
Okay. Let's see here. Go try to go to church now.
Good morning. All right, well, I'm gonna get ready to head on over to the church. Well, I'll wait till y'all finish then. Make sure y'all get to children's church. Ashley, you have a good time at the tailgate yesterday? Yeah, it's fun. Who else came to the
Cookies
tailgate?
were great. I love the cookies.
Oh, okay, good. Oh,
Yep.
you too? Okay. What was your favorite? So what was your favorite part?
The candy.
The candy, I know. They gave y'all a big old bag.
Bingo was my favorite part. I didn't even have to win. I just showed last minute, started playing, and then I won something.
Oh, nice.
One.
Yeah.
Ashley, what was your favorite part? Did you do line dancing? Did you do 360?
Yeah, I did.
That's always fun. And the food's good. But go around and see you there.
I set up, left, and came back.
Oh, okay.
So I was here that morning.
Oh, okay.
I was here like early.
Okay.
We got all the chairs and tents. And then I had to be somewhere at 1. And I came back at like 4.
Oh,
So I helped out with kind of the setup. We moved everything in that hallway Friday.
okay.
So we put in some work.
Fine. I was a judge for the cakes.
They go.
Okay, well,
Church service.
you guys about ready?
We can go to youth church.
Did you say that Mel said she was gonna come back and get this?
Oh, I was gonna say the other day, give it to them next